Hello, welcome to our webinar. The Silverchair Universe presents Figshare. This is Stephanie Lovegrove. I'm the marketing manager at Silverchair, and we're excited to have you with us today to learn more about Figshare. We have with us Mark Honnell, who will be taking us through some of Figshare's offerings. And first, I want to just do a few housekeeping things before we get started. Attendees have been muted, so if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please type those into the chat box and we'll address those at the end. We will have some time for Q&A. The webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording will be sent to you afterwards. Finally, when the webinar is concluded, you'll get a brief survey, and we would appreciate if you could take a moment and complete that to help us to improve both the universe offerings as well as the webinar series itself. And now, without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Mark.
Thanks, Stephanie. So I should be able to share my screen shortly. Yes, show my screen. So hopefully everybody can see and hear me. I'm sure Stephanie will let me know if that's not the case. Thanks for having me. It's looking good? Great, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm going to be talking today about Figshare. We're not going to take too much of your time, so it may be a whistle-stop tour, but here's some contact details on the first slide if you would like to reach out afterwards. Thanks for Silverchair for hosting us. And so for those who don't know, Figshare operates in the data space primarily. So everything's getting more computational in research. If you're in the humanities, people are creating all these videos, all these social science studies. If you're in chemistry or the life sciences, you're seeing a lot of data sets and code and all of these new forms of research output. And so question number one you might be asking is, why should I as a publisher care about anything other than the PDF? And this was intentionally a little bit antagonistic because I know publishers do amazing work around the beautiful online versions we see of papers now, HTML, JATS XML, all of that other fun stuff. So I'm trying to simplify it to the level at which I talk to my mum about these things. So, but the main concept here is academic publishing is the story around the research. We've seen all of these papers come out. There's thousands and thousands of papers telling really great stories around research, and it is the context. It is what have you shown to be true and why is that relevant and why is that important in this particular journal? And it's the way science and research has always been carried out, and it will long continue. So you're talking to me about data, Mark. What's that got to do with anything? Well, in the last 10 years or so since Figshare has been operating, we've seen governments aligning to support public access of research. So this is way back in 2012, we were seeing the first signs of universities, publishers, and mainly funders driving this move towards we pay for the research, we want to see all outputs of the research. And so we started working with publishers to help them with their data infrastructure, because a lot of these academics move towards the publishers as the place where they know the dissemination of their work will be the fullest. And these mandates have continued to grow. This is just 2 reports from this year alone. So in the EU, the European Commission has big plans for open research and open data, mainly driven by this idea that they could save 10.2 billion euros per year by using fair data. I'll come back to what fair data is in a moment, but it's a big number and it's a big driver. So they're saying everybody in Europe who's funded by European Commission research is going to have to make all of their data openly available. And then in the US, on the 14th of January, we saw a bill signed into law that's taken years from the Obama administration, where Donald Trump signed in the Open Government Data Act, which means that all federally funded research outputs have to be made publicly available. So all of the data sets associated with publications are going to need to be made available. That law comes into effect in July. So this is fascinating in the sense that everybody's going to have to do it. There's a few different ways in which you can make your data available, but more and more they're turning to the publishers to say, how can you help me in the same way that they've been um, looking to send supporting information at your journal. You may have seen the number of supporting information files increasing over time. And so this comes with various opportunities. We work with various publishers to help them with their data infrastructure to accept these files so that the publisher just becomes a one-stop shop for the researcher to share all of their outputs and comply with all of these policies in a very simplistic way. So it really is an author service on that level. And we have seen business models around that, anything from send us all of your files and we'll charge you an additional fee on top of your APC, or Springer Nature now are charging for data curation services. So because it's a new world, because a lot of academics are having this new law enforced upon them and they don't know what they do, being able to offer that service and become that expert in the field is where publishers can really expand into new offerings. And we see ourselves as the consultative partner to think through these things with you as well, because we've been in this space for a long time. Things like fair data is our everyday life. So it's new to a lot of people, but believe me, we think about it a lot. So on that note, what does it mean? So I don't mean to be patronizing if you've heard this before. FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable for both humans and for machines. And so this is the idea that you can build on top of the data that's gone before, reproducible research, and the impact of research can be bigger if the data is released. And while the actual parameters have not been nailed down fantastically, we do know that everyone from Francis Collins at the NIH to that slide I showed you about the European Commission saying they're going to save 10.2 billion euros a year by following these protocols. We are really at Figshare thinking about the technology side of things and the people side of things, because at the moment, technology can get you so far, to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable for humans. But we feel there needs to be a people element in order to make things interoperable and reusable. And particularly around society journals, this is subject-specific context. And so this is really where society journals can help their academics and offer a service to them. So what we've been thinking about on the FAIR side is ticking these boxes for you. How far can we get with just the technology? So if you look at findable, the F in FAIR, if you're going to be publishing data sets with your journals, you want to make them findable. So what does that mean? If you work with Figshare, we'll provide APIs, but we'll also ensure that your data sets end up in Google Dataset Search, in the Dimensions project from Digital Science, in DataCite, OpenAir, PubMed. You can see a long list of them there. No one else will make will get your data sets indexed in as many places. We were an alpha partner with the Google Dataset Search, and in the bottom right there, you can see that we work with national level infrastructure that is indexing data sets as well. We're also going to be the first data sets are going into Dimensions, if any of you have heard of the Dimensions tool, and we're going to be the source of data sets for that. So we want to make sure that there's a robust level of curated data sets that are going in. And the other thing we've been doing with some of our organizations that we work with is trying to understand how we're doing, marking ourselves as we go. So we hired a data visualization expert and said, okay, if we're just looking at FAIR for humans, can we test the data that we have already? And so the first one here is some PLOS data. Of course, the context is it's linked to the article, but we host this data for PLOS. And on the left-hand side, you can see that the data visualization expert, even though he only has a scientific background, not necessarily a cancer background, which this research is, still was able to do something really cool with it and build on top of the research. A secondary one here, this was Springer Nature. We got some data sets, and again, the data visualization expert, even though he didn't know the protein ligand extended connectivity world, who does, he still managed to create this amazing visualization. And perhaps the best one he did here was this scientific data visualization of dives. So um, we are very confident on the human side of it, and now we have to think about the people side of it. So if you're in meetings internally and people are talking about what are we going to do about data, how are we going to address this, and even have you heard about fair data, how are we going to tick that box? That seems like a minefield. Come and speak to us. We're very happy to talk on a consultative level, but we also have the technology to get you very far, very fast in this space with not much heavy lifting on your side. So how do we do that? I'm going to talk about two main parts to the data side of things. One is supporting all of these different outputs and making them available in a certain way, and then some other cool features as well that we've built. So, sorry, the portal, we call it. This is all of your research outputs. So everything that is not the article itself, what are you doing with it? How are you indexing it, and how is it being made available? So here we can see the Royal Society, and then a drop down, a sub repository of the Royal Society, which is one of the journals, biology letters. So essentially, this is a repository of all of the data sets, all of the videos, all of the code from the Royal Society. Each journal has its own sub repository. We support custom domains, so you can have this live on your own domain. So it's not taking the traffic elsewhere. The idea that it could live at data.publisher.com or supinfo.publisher.com. And you can filter this in many different ways. You can see here's Springer Nature on the left. You can see you can have your own license support, so people can filter and say, I just want to find everything that is under this license. I want to find videos, I want to find stem cell videos, and then you can do cool stuff with it and you can pull it in. We, of course, take care of all of the heavy lifting here with regards to persistent identifiers. You can have your own branded data DOIs. These come as part of the package. And the whole idea here is it's just off the shelf. We provide everything, custom domains, custom DOIs, but we also ensure linking back to the articles as well. So there is that context. We provide APIs so you can build on top of it and pull in these files into any blogs or any outreach you do. Everything, every output, we track the citation counts. We are the only ones who do that. We track altmetric scores. Altmetric scores come again with the package itself. So you can see if you're looking to track the impact of various different outputs, you can see how that is being picked up by the academic community. And here's an example where you can see on a PLOS data set, we're getting lots of impact, and the PLOS corpus of research outputs, everything is getting over 50 million views. So it's a lot more attention for your research, whilst the researcher gets a compliant tick box here. So this is very easy for us to do. We can set these up with no work on your end. We have a nice tight integration with Silverchair to set these up for you, and we'd be happy to talk about what that could look like for you. If I just talk about the second half here, as I say, I'm trying to keep this under 30 minutes for you. This is the exciting side of research, right? When if you're creating all these different research outputs, 3D files, spinny molecules, Jupyter notebooks, and you want to get credit for them, you want to publish them because it's cool, it shows off your research in the best way, then we can do that with the Figshare viewer. So this is an example of, on the left-hand side, on a PLOS article, how it was embedded into the actual article. It just shows up within the actual article itself, where in most cases people put them in the supporting information section. So you can now say, we used to accept these different file formats, now we accept any file format. Give us any file format, we can accept any file size, you don't have to have limitations there, and we will preview it in the browser. So on the left image, you can see it in line with the actual article itself. You can push play there, or you can pop it up and you can see it's a video to play in this case. And some interesting facts about this, Springer Nature actually found that 62% were more likely to submit a manuscript because they loved this feature where they could just throw in all of these extra files to show off their work. Because if academic publishing isn't about an author showing off their work, then how are you going to get more people reading it and what have you? And so, as I said, we accept any file format. We preview over 1,200 different file formats in the browser. And here you can see in these two GIFs here, the way in which they look in the article. In the one on the left in Taylor and Francis, you can scroll down and there's this active under supplemental information. You can see there's two files. You can cite it. It's got its own DOI and you can track that. On the right-hand side, we're seeing a pop-up of 3 data sets in an article. This can sit in front of the paywall, so it drives people in, even if the actual article itself is behind a paywall. If you have any questions on that, please let me know, because I appreciate I'm whizzing through it. So I just want to talk about a couple of extra things. One is the people part. As I said, we do think about this all day, every day, and we are spending our days at conferences talking to the right people about what FAIR really needs to look like. If you research FAIR and look at infrastructure for FAIR, Figshare comes top in all of the big surveys. So, but we know we have to do more. We have 30 developers working on this, pushing this actively, but we also try and help people understand what the human part is. If we're talking about FAIR for humans, FAIR for machines needs some subject-specific context, right? So the data visualization expert we paid to create those visualizations I showed you before, he could find the paper, read the context, and understand and interpret it. But how are machines supposed to be doing that going forward? And this really does require some human level of checking. So we're happy to do the checking, but we're also happy to help you support your editors, your editorial board, to check each of these files. So you can see this is what our dashboard looks like for submitted files. You can see we have authenticate, reporting, and virus scanning, so we take care of all the technology side of things. But if I was to click on that bottom thumbnail, this is what you see. You can review the item itself. You can send this off to the peer reviewers and say, you need to review it. So they can either approve it or they can edit the item and change the metadata, add embargoes, all of these things. And the things we're thinking about more and more going forward is this idea of subject-specific context at the level of the publisher. So different types of metadata. And just to demonstrate how we're helping different organizations, this is a case study that came out last week. The DOI is here. I can share these slides afterwards, or if you Google the title, you'll probably find it. And this was just understanding a lot of journals are coming up with new policies, trying to get their head around this, knowing they're having to do something around this and trying to do the best practice. As I mentioned, we work with this a lot. So we thought along with Taylor and Francis, where they've got a set of 5 data sharing policies across their publications. So if you have any questions about how other people have done it, we're more than happy to share what they deem to be best practice. In fact, the scientific data recommended repositories list lives on Figshare, so we can talk a lot about how Springer Nature has approached this. They're really thinking long and hard about what the policies should be on a journal level, what the policies should be across the board, and where the data should end up. So if you have any questions on that, even if you're not interested in the technological side of it, we're more than happy to jump on a call and shoot the breeze. So what's next when it comes to data? Because we've got the simple workflows. We work very well with Silverchair. We work to make sure that we can get you very far, very fast. But we're always moving. We're always thinking about how we can improve the service. So one thing we're seeing is an uptick in citations from publications to data sets that are not in the publisher repositories, and we're seeing thousands of them. So we know about them. We use dimensions and we can aggregate this information, so we can find all of the information about outputs that are being referenced. And in the most cases, it is, here is a data set that backs up the findings of this paper. it's self-citation linking in the majority. So we're more than happy to discuss whether we know about some of your data sets already and how we can feed those to you. And that's from lots of different repositories that we're aggregating. Another thing we're doing is the next level. As I said, we accept any file format on your behalf and we preview it in the browser. And when thinking about the next step of research, so computational research, executable files, you may have seen what's her name? Code Ocean, who's just focusing on this one specific aspect. We're going with the idea that we'll take care of every digital output that is associated with the paper, and we want to add that feature in. And so last week you may have seen Digital Science is now working with two new companies, Repeta and Gigantum, really focused on reproducible research. And we really see Gigantum as the way to execute those files. So we will have the executable files to be able to play with, really pushing the needle there, while also taking care of everything. So in that idea of getting you very far, very fast, it's as far as the space has moved, and it takes care of everything in a very simplistic manner. The one last thing I'm just going to talk about for a couple of minutes, and then I promise I'll let you go, is other outputs. So when I said everything other than the peer-reviewed article, what is it that a publisher is thinking about at the conferences you go to? What are you hearing about? And so data has been big. We've spent a long time perfecting those data workflows, making sure we're ticking all the boxes in a simplistic manner. But the other thing that's come along in the last few years has been the rise of preprints. And we have a preprints offering. It allows your academics to come along, submit preprints, also because of our data infrastructure, throw in the videos, the data sets, everything else as well. So technologically, we're the most advanced preprint server there is. And as a result of that, we work with a few organizations. This is ChemArchive, you may have heard of, from ACS, the German Chemical Society, and the Royal Society of Chemistry in the UK. And so this lives at chemarchive.org. You can go there now and see what it looks like. And it really is a demonstration of a success story, but it really is an interesting thing from a business point of view because of how the explosion in preprints has affected where people are starting to publish their papers. So if every researcher creates a preprint, you see the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation is saying any research that comes out from their organization has to be a preprint first, then where the publications end up post preprint is a really interesting space. But just to highlight some of the success of it, on the left-hand side, you can see after less than a year, so in August 2017 they started, and in the first year they got about 500 preprints, which is a really great number, and 500,000 views and downloads, of which in the first year already more than a third of them were being published as journal articles, mainly in ACS article journals, which I'll talk about a bit more in a moment. Really global footprint. And now you can see that number's exploded. It's really growing exponentially. This is a screenshot from today. We're at nearly 2 million views and downloads. We're at 1,500 posts. So this is, coming on 2 years, and they're really exploding. And what's really interesting about that is if we look at bioRxiv as a case study here, bioRxiv allows the authors to submit to different journals through the system. And so bioRxiv has a lot of publications. If you look where those publications end up, there's 115 different publishers, and the highest percentages are Springer Nature and Elsevier, which is kind of expected because they are the biggest publishers of research, biggest academic publishers. But it's really interesting to see how can the smaller publications make use of this. And we see with PeerJ, they have preprints, and you can submit from PeerJ preprints into PeerJ. And so 100% of the PeerJ preprints that have gone on to be published in a journal have ended up in PeerJ. So if you're looking to make provide a case for getting more submissions into your workflow, capturing the attention of the authors at point of submission of completing the research, then we're trying to help with that. So we've set up with our preprint services as well the ability to streamline the submission from Chem Archive into journal peer review. We've done this for other organizations as well. So we work with Sage has a preprint server that is now trying to collect these humanities researchers, engage with them, and just provide a nice whole workflow from we want to support you in your publications from the moment you do a preprint to the moment you do a publication where you need to tick all of these funder boxes as well. We can do that for you as well. So if you'd like to hear more about how we're doing preprint workflows as well, we're very interested to discuss how that might help with this new model of research publications that we're seeing. That's everything from me, so I will stop there. Happy to answer any questions if there are any now. If you'd like to follow up separately offline, you can ping me at mark@figshare.com or get in touch through the Silverchair team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Let's see, looking for questions. I know we have a note from Adrian about STM. There's people attending STM this week. If anyone wants to follow up there, if you're attending. If you have other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box now, and we can get to those as well. And I did want to also mention that we have on our blog in January a great post from Alan about Figshare, about data opportunities for publishers in 2019 that I'd recommend checking out if you want more information as well, which also includes some of the findings from the State of Open Data report, which was really wonderful. Let's see, just checking to see if anyone else has questions they want to ask. And otherwise, like Mark said, feel free to follow up offline, either directly with him or with your PDM if you have questions specific to the integration. We're happy to talk about those. Otherwise, I'm not saying anything else. But yeah, thank you so much, Mark. This was really wonderful. Nice to have an overview. I know preprints are a big topic of conversation for people these days, so it's nice to know that Figshare is very useful for that as well, among many other things. And otherwise, just give one more second. All right, looks like that's it. Thanks everybody for joining us. Like I said, you will get a recording of this if you'd like to share it or revisit anything. You'll also get a survey if you can take a moment to fill that out. Thanks so much, Mark, for joining us. Appreciate it, and hope to see you all again on a future Universe webinar. Thank you.